Okay, let's get rolling. I know that everyone has things that they need to be doing on this beautiful evening. I want to welcome everyone. Thanks so much for coming. And thanks, Megan, for being our first presenter. I really appreciate you. I have a little bio to read for Megan. She is currently the Nutrition and Risk Prevention Manager for Montgomery County Fire Rescue in Maryland. She's a registered dietitian with a master's in sports nutrition, and she is also a TSAC facilitator with the NSCA. Megan leads nutrition programming and provides fitness instruction for recruits and career firefighters in the field. And her mission is to help firefighters perform better, recover faster, and live longer. So Megan, I'm gonna let you take it away. And if you have questions while Megan is presenting, just go ahead and butt in. Why not? All right,
Yes,
take it away,
please
Megan.
interrupt me at any point. Thank you for that introduction, Annette. Again, my name's Megan. So today I'm going to talk about nutrition with firefighters and admit, okay. And I think most of us know when it comes to nutrition for firefighters, sometimes it feels like an uphill battle, but really it's small changes that tend to be better. So this is kind of my approach with Montgomery County and how it's worked so far. So let's see. I've been with Montgomery County for about 3.5 years now. Last year I was we have a department of, I believe it's about 1,500 career firefighters, and then about 1,000 volunteers. So it's a relatively large department just outside of DC. So last year, I was able to get to every station and every shift. We do, I think it's a 24-48 shifts. So they work 24 hours or all 48 hours. So we have 3 shifts, A, B, and C. Was able to get to all 40 stations and all shifts last year, which ended up being about 180 visits in 2019. Now, of course, it's all gone to crap with COVID, so it hasn't been as involved this year. But some of the stuff that I've been doing, nutrition presentations at the station, mostly kind of more of a round table than it is like a strict presentation, kind of like today. Workouts designed for optimal performance, mobility demonstrations, so getting on the ground, showing them how to foam roll, and then body composition assessments as well. So I'll just go out and use the Omron. And just by going out every few months to do bioelectrical impedance or body composition, we've seen as much as 8% body fat loss just by me showing up and checking in on them. And that's without even strict coaching. So, and on average, about 1% body fat loss. Granted, it's over a 3-month period, but it's something we're making progress. So that's been pretty helpful. I also do recruit training. I have a whole curriculum with our recruit classes. We usually have about 2 per year, between 25 and 70 recruits at a time, actually 80 recruits at a time, and then of course CPAT. So these are some of the things that I'm currently doing with our department. Let me let someone in. So firefighter health risks. You know, if you guys are coming in here, I know you all are wellness professionals in the field, you're top dogs. So you probably already know some of this stuff, but it's always good to review it, especially from a dietitian standpoint. So cardiovascular disease, that's one of our #1 concerns with firefighters. That's 45% of line of duty deaths are from some sort of sudden cardiac event. Basically due to the excess stress, the extra heat, dehydration, altered electrolytes, plus they're not in as good shape as they might have been back in the day. And then something happens, maybe when they get home from the call, or maybe at the call itself. So still relatively lower risk because only about 1 to 3% of calls are fire related, but it's that risk we don't want to take. Next big concern from a firefighter standpoint is cancer. 27% of all cause mortality in firefighters from the last thing I read. And then of course, I mean, we can see this at the stations, overweight and obesity. The longer someone is in their career, the bigger the gut tends to grow. So usually what I use as a dietitian when I'm talking to people about weight is their body fat percentage. And in Montgomery County, like I said, we have bioelectrical impedance, that handheld Omron machine that's pretty cheap. You get one for, I think it's like $50 on Amazon. And then we recently got an InBody, which is that more like $10,000 body fat scale. That's pretty detailed. We haven't gotten a whole lot of hands-on using that yet because it has to be done in the clinic. And of course, no one's coming in for physicals with COVID. So usually I try to keep the body fat for men. Ideally, I'd love to see it under 20%. I'll allow 24, and women under 30% for body fat percentage if possible. All right, there we go. So this I include under health risks as well. You know, sure, it's not technically a condition, but mental health and PTSD is a big, big concern. Firefighters 5 times more likely to suffer from PTSD or something related to a bad call, or maybe even just from prior military service, that kind of thing. Much higher risk for suicide, alcohol, drug abuse, divorce. I'm sure you guys have seen this, you've heard it. And the biggest thing for me from a dietitian standpoint is that impact on dietary choices. When you run a call that's really rough, we had a lieutenant who I was talking to who ran, I think, 5 pediatric codes, like within 27 days of his second daughter's birth. That was really rough for him. You're not going to come back from those calls and pound down a kale salad. It's just not how that works. I wouldn't do that for sure. So, again, I try not to be really black or white, and we'll talk about some of the ways that we can get people eating a little bit healthier. But you really do want to make sure you're asking those questions in a, you know, not right off the bat as you get to know that person, to see why they eat a certain way, or if really is eating that big of a focus right now. Do we need to call either a social worker or whoever's in charge of mental health with your department? So this is Firehouse culture, right? So these are some of the big things when we talk about nutrition that I've observed going out to stations, or they tag me in them on Facebook, now that we're all buddies on Facebook. So you can see a lovely bacon wrapped, cheese stuffed smoked meatloaf. I've seen these multiple times in the department. I think it's actually one of our favorites here. But the portions tend to be large. Oops, I gotta admit someone. Portions tend to be large. People eat really, really fast. Part of that's because they're really worried that there's going to be a call dropping at any second, and they better get something in their mouth before they may be stuck on the ambulance or whatever for possibly hours. Portions, I know that people tend to kind of, I can eat more than you, da, 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 da. That's what I've seen before, especially at certain stations. Tends to be higher fat, red meat, not very high in fiber. If there's the vegetable, because the dietitian's, you know, hanging out that day, they might give me a nice little iceberg lettuce salad. You know, and this isn't every department or every station. We've had stations where we've had vegan chefs, vegetarian chefs, and they make really great healthy meals. But in terms of tendencies, people are going, you know, chefs at the firehouses are leaning towards these because of cost, because they're trying to appease 6 to 14 different people. In our county, donuts are a big thing. I've never seen so much donuts in my life. I thought cops were more about donuts. But when you're on overtime, one of the traditions is you bring in a dozen donuts for the shift. So when you walk into the station in Montgomery County, chances are you're going to find a dozen donuts sitting on the counter. Sometimes they hide them from me and put them in like a closet somewhere, and I always find them. So sweets, donuts on the counter, that's, you know, typical at some of the stations that I've seen. If it's a really busy station, you know, calls back to back, a lot of people stop for fast food. Some of them are motivated to stop for fast food because some areas in our county will give 50% off or more. And then excess caffeine is a big thing, sugar sweetened beverages, and they're making big changes. So they're either on a plan and they're getting their health together, they're losing that weight before the cruise or whatever they've got planned this summer, or they're just completely off the rails. So it's really hard to kind of get these firefighters in from black or white mindset into more of that gray area. So if I was going to summarize, and I got to get better at this clicking thing. If I was going to summarize a culture shift, we'd be shifting more to appropriate portions. Most firefighters, especially at busier shifts, are going to need a little bit more food. They may be bigger guys, bigger girls in general. So the portions need to be appropriate to the person. You never want to assume the whole shift is trying to lose weight, though there are some out there. But people need to have that autonomy. You can't just hand them an 8-inch plate and be like, eat off this plate. Some people are going to need more than a tiny plate of food. They still need to fuel for the shift, fuel for hopefully workouts or something like that. Trying to get people to eat slower is a big thing too, but it is, again, tricky. So, on shift, that fear of a call is going to drop at any second. I need to get this food down. So that might be something more at home. Trying to get people to eat more fiber. So like we said, cardiovascular disease is one of those bigger things, one of the bigger health issues. People tend to come to me with high blood pressure and high cholesterol. And one of the biggest things I have people focus on is getting more fiber in. So, and again, fiber comes with what? Carbohydrate. So that's going to be your fruits, your veggies, and your whole grains. So it is kind of challenging, especially coming out of that whole keto fad, to get people to eat a little bit more fiber and carbs. Cutting out the sweets and donuts, hiding it, instead of it being on the counter, putting it in a cabinet and putting fruit on the counter. A lot of times if I am going to a station and I remember, I'll usually buy a couple bags of apples when I run to Aldi and just leave a bag of apples on the counter, and they usually go right for it. So that's one trick if you are getting out to the stations, to just leave, a $2 bag of apples on the counter, and they're pretty happy with that. More water, some caffeine, slow changes, and that emphasis on the sleep and mental health. I'm not going to go really in on that with this presentation, but that is a big factor when it comes to this. So, and recently, I was very excited to get this a couple days ago. Someone actually tagged me and tried one of the recipes that I put out there, and it was actually a green smoothie. And you know how hard it is to get people who never blended spinach into a smoothie to actually try it, and they actually liked it. So it is small, slow changes here in Montgomery County. So when we're talking about fad diets, right, there's so many different diets out there. And the thing is, when I started with Montgomery County, I was like, you know what, let me just pick one and be like, yes, this is it. This is the diet we're going to tell everybody to follow. And I chose the Mediterranean diet because of Dr. Kale's research out there. It was pretty interesting. It just came out at that time. But really, firefighters don't like it when you tell them what to do, which I'm sure is shocking to the audience. They don't like it. So instead of having people follow one diet, if they ask me, they want to know which one that I recommend, I'll still say Mediterranean or something like that. But really, it comes down to, when you want to lose weight, and this is just weight loss specifically, you can pick any diet you want. You just got to be in a calorie deficit. When it comes to health, again, it comes to the food choices and that kind of thing, making better options, and I can coach someone into that. Again, Mediterranean's great for the health standpoint. But for a weight loss standpoint, you can kind of look at fad diets in 3 different ways: the food choices, the portion size, the timing. That all restricts calories in one way or another. The challenge is how well can you stick to it? And how many firefighters have you met can stick to a diet plan or a fad diet or any of these things for longer than 5 years or a year or even 3 months? Keto, I know one guy in our department who was mostly keto for several years, and his wife was diagnosed with brain cancer. And that was part of his motivation. But when you're talking about people who are just trying to lose weight, they're not going to stay on keto that long, because you can't have a beer with the guys. You can't have a cupcake at your daughter's birthday party, because it throws you out of that diet. So, when it comes to nutrition plans, I don't try and recommend one or the other. It's really just paying more attention to your food and the calories. Again, if I was going to go with pillars or some of the core values of food, this is a Michael Pollan quote. I don't follow him religiously or anything, but I think it's good for firefighters. The goal is most of the time eating real food, not too much, mostly plants. One of my fun little adages is AMVAP, as many vegetables as possible. And my husband says I'm a nag when it comes to this, but one of the hardest things I think most people will emphasize with is vegetables are hard to get in. You have to prep them. They don't taste that great. They're not very portable. And you can say, well, there's X, X, Y, and Z way that you can make it portable and that kind of thing. But to the general population, they're not thinking about that. So we've got to figure out ways to sneak veggies into the dinners, or make it portable and that kind of thing, kind of cut down some of those barriers. Ideally, if someone can get a veggie on their plate at lunch and dinner, I'm pretty happy. And the more that they can get it in, the better. The 80-20 rule is another really good way of thinking about this. 80% of the time eating the stuff that you want to eat, the healthy stuff, the fruits, the vegetables, the whole grains, the lean proteins, blah, 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 but still having time for the fun foods. So in appropriate portions. So about pizza, ice cream, whatever. When I was bodybuilding, and I'm well out of that, I would have ice cream every night. And that was the only way I could basically not murder my husband because I was starving. But that was my way of kind of keeping things in check and still enjoying the foods that I want to. From a hydration standpoint, 64 to 125, I think that's the one, I forget who it is, but that's typically the recommendation for water per day. And it really probably could be more on some of these hot and humid days that we're sticking with in August right now. And the primary reason why is, although calls, fire suppression calls are 1 to 3% out of the year, it's still really important to be prepared for that at all times. If you look at a normal person exercising, they might lose 8 to 16 ounces of sweat in an hour. And that's like somebody who's like a sweaty person. But they have sweat wicking clothes and they're not exerting themselves that much. When you can compare that to a firefighter, they can lose between 50 and 70 ounces in 30 to 45 minutes of sweat. They have gear that's keeping the heat out, yes, but it's also keeping the heat in. So losing a lot of sweat, absolutely drenched kind of thing. And a lot of times they're arriving dehydrated. So really trying to get them, 64 is like my minimum day to day. That's 4 16-ounce water bottles. It's hard to get that in when you have a really busy shift. But figuring out a way to get that to work out is pretty important, considering how much they could lose if they do end up having a call. This is just a guide for portion control. A lot of times firefighters, especially the active ones, are going to need more food than this. It's very challenging for women because they tend to be sitting at a table with a bunch of guys who inhale what seems like 3 or 4 times as much food as they're allowed to have, or should have. So, but the hand guidance does help. I usually will allow, if it's a leaner portion of protein, full hand size of chicken or whatever, not the bacon wrap pork, whatever. I'd rather people eat a little bit more protein than double up on the rice and the carbs if they're just sitting around all day. So that's one way you can kind of guide them into better portion control. Eating slower. Again, this is something that firefighters tend to want to light me on fire. This graphic really, they did not love it. But it is hard to eat slower at the firehouse. It really is. So one of my tricks is, if you are at a busier firehouse, is to get a plate about like half of the plate that your eyes want, right? Eat that your normal pace. Then go back and then get, the other half of that plate and eat it a little bit slower this time, if that's something you want to focus on. People who eat faster, they don't recognize that they're full at a normal, in a normal amount of time. So they end up eating a lot more food than their stomach really wants. And then they wonder why their digestion's slow, they're feeling sluggish and that kind of thing after dinner. So it also helps cut their portion if they eat slower without even realizing it. So the goal is to try and make a plate last 15 to 20 minutes. And that may seem like a really long time for some of my firefighters in the audience. It's something to work towards. You don't need to do that next meal. It's just slow it down a little bit. So exercise, and I'm sure we're going to have some very qualified individuals rant on this a little bit more than I do, but the exercise is really important. We know that from a just general health standpoint. We know that from a just protection on the fire ground, being able to get one of your guys out in an efficient way without hurting yourself. But 30 minutes 3 times a week is the minimum. And that's what's going to help people who have high cholesterol, high blood pressure. If they're telling you they don't do any cardio, if they're telling, my bodybuilder guys who are like, but I lift 5 times a week, that's great. But your cholesterol's high. You got to get some cardio in to help clear that out. So 3 times 30 minutes, ideally. If you have a bigger guy in the shift, you can just get them to walk on the treadmill or something, hang out on the elliptical. It's easier on their knees. We just need to get them a little bit better than where they were before. So throwing them into one of these crazy firefighter workouts, this badass workout you saw on the internet, that's not the place to start them. We just need to get them doing something. Even if they'll stretch or foam roll, maybe that'll make their back feel a little bit better, or their knees or whatever. Something is always going to be better than nothing when it comes to exercise, when it comes to nutrition, when it comes to any of this health stuff. And Annette will love me for this. Sleep's super important too. Naps count. Ideally we want to go for the 7 to 9 hours of sleep per day. So you're not going to get that on a shift night a lot of times. That's okay. When you get back from work, maybe take a nap or something like that. Gets challenging, gets muddy with kids. You just got to work with someone on it. Avoiding alcohol and caffeine and tobacco before bed is important too. Usually it's a 6-hour before bed cutoff. So if you're allowed to go to bed at 9 p.m., you got to cut it off at like 3 p.m. in terms of coffee, which is really hard for the guys who are taking down 3 pots of coffee a day or more. So in terms of planning that out and timing, there's a way to kind of trick this to make it a little bit easier. You can either do a 20-minute nap or a 90-minute sleep cycle. So you go through 4 phases of sleep, right? You're awake, light sleep, REM sleep, and deep sleep. It usually takes about 90 minutes to go through that whole cycle. And if you wake up during any of those times, you can be pretty irritable. If you've ever woken up for a call or just in the middle of the night because the baby's crying kind of thing, and you want to punch someone in the head, that's kind of where it is. You wake up really irritable. So we try to keep the naps before you fall into those deeper stages at 20 minutes. And it's not necessarily you're going to get sleep, the restorative stuff, but more of a focus on breathing. It helps your brain tap out and make you a little bit more alert. You can make it a power nap by adding 200 milligrams of caffeine from 12 to 16 ounces of coffee or something like that. It takes about 20 minutes for that to kick in. You wake up from your nap or your 20-minute thing and you're good to go. Now, adding the caffeine before these longer sleep periods, 90 minutes or longer, not a good idea. But for the little quick 20-minute thing, that might help give you a little bit of a power nap, especially for people on shift where they don't have a lot of time. They may only be able to sleep a little bit on like an armchair or something like that before they've got to go back out to calls and stuff like that. So, but that also depends on the captain, depends on leadership, if they'll allow them to even do that. In terms of longer stages, 1.5 hours, 3 hours, 4.5, 6, I believe 5 hours is what you need for the true restorative sleep at one time. And that's where your brain kind of, the thought is taking out the trash, right? You have a bad call, you see something negative, just clearing out metabolism, that kind of thing. Getting that 5 hours of sleep can really make a difference in how people respond to calls and how they feel when they wake up. So, long term, you don't want to be doing these little 3-hour things for permanent, but, again, trying to get at least the 5 hours when possible. And I'm running up on the end, but caffeine is something that's really important when it comes to firefighters. I'm sure I could talk about the nuances of nutrition all day, but this is one of the biggest things you're going to see is overdoing the caffeine. And personally, I can't give up caffeine. I'm never going to give up coffee. So why would I expect one of my firefighters to give up coffee when they're awake way more than I am? Really, the goal is to keep it under 400 milligrams per day. And that's 4 to 5 8-ounce, little baby 8-ounce cups of coffee. That doesn't include the pre-workout, doesn't include the energy drinks. It doesn't include all this other stuff that caffeine can come in gum now. All these other things that people in firefighters will find them caffeine in. So if you look at it again, the 4 to 5 8-ounce cups of coffee, that's 1 scoop of pre-workout. I try to get them off the pre-workout. They never listen. 1 scoop of pre-workout and a 16-ounce coffee, or 1 to 2 energy drinks. I don't recommend energy drinks. I know people are going to do them anyway. If you do one, most of the time you'll be fine. Not going to recommend that to somebody with high blood pressure or acid reflux or pregnant, that kind of thing. But more is never going to be better. And you really want to stop at 2 or 3 o'clock if you want to make sure your sleep is up to par. Again, we have a lot of people who have high blood pressure, acid reflux, and caffeine is going to make those conditions worse. Jack up the blood pressure, or for people with acid reflux, it lowers the pressure of the lower esophageal sphincter, causing the acid to come up a little bit more. So usually we cut that out for people with those conditions, and you'd be surprised how many people have acid reflux in the department. So again, this just shows you some of the caffeine, where it comes from. We want to keep it under 400 milligrams per day. This is a big thing when it comes to recruits or just going out in the field, talking about it, checking on it. We had one recruit put 2 full bottles of the Mio Energy into his water bottle, and it was like fluorescent orange. It was crazy. He didn't end up drinking it. We caught him in time, but people just don't realize the serving size of caffeine and how quickly it adds up, especially in those little concentrated things. I mean, it looks like a drink flavoring. You can put as much as you want in, right? No, it's got 60 milligrams of caffeine, over 2,000 milligrams. If you put 2 of those in a water bottle, it's crazy. So keep an eye on that. All right, so hopefully Annette I can unmute everybody. But again, my name's Megan. I have a Instagram account, MCFRS Nutrition, where I post nutrition and fitness and recipes. I also have a recipe book for Montgomery County that's free for dinners. If you want that, I will gladly send you the link. And let's see if I can unmute everybody. Or Annette.
Does anyone have any questions for Megan? I believe you can unmute yourself at this point. Yes, no?
Yeah, I got a question for Megan. This is Manny.
Hi.
I'm curious to know, what have you found to be, I guess, the most well received when you're pretty much talking about any of these topics? Do you find that there's a certain approach or a certain maybe way you got to word things? It's probably a broad question, but you can answer it any way you want.
Yeah, totally. Kind of just the way that I've gone through it here. I could tell, again, I was a bodybuilder, so I'm I got macros, I got calories. I could tell you why and the reasons why you need X amount of protein. Not everybody wants to do that. Not everybody wants to know the nuances of that kind of stuff. So I kind of just go with, again, those very specific behaviors and then trying to talk it around the shift and using shift language.
Right.
And again, I'm still getting better at it. I don't sound like a firefighter. I'm not a firefighter. But trying to work things around their shift, time management is a big thing. So if you can make it quicker, you can make it faster, it usually helps. Does that help?
Actually, yeah. It's thank you for the insight. And actually, I think I can piggyback off the last point you made with the second question of mine on time management. So essentially, what I find most with firefighters is that they don't really see a healthy diet or lifestyle as or they see it as it's out of their way, to a certain degree. At least for the ones that have trouble with making it a habit change. And in that scenario, a lot of times I think they have the chance of relapse or maybe dropping the ball is kind of too easy for them. Do you think it'd be possible, for the fire department to want to do maybe an in-house type meal service?
We have a pretty decent budget in Montgomery County. I don't exist in a lot of counties, so
right, yeah.
They probably won't go for that. I've put together materials. What I've done is called different places, Montgomery, different meal prep services in Montgomery County to see if they offer discounts and put that kind of stuff together. So having either on a web page or something like that, or a handout, and giving it to them that way. But a lot of them, like some of them can't afford that kind of thing. Like, a lot of people I've seen, they're on their second or third marriage, which means their pension and their salaries and their alimony, it's all been cut in half. So
Right.
there's a good chunk of them who can't afford it. So it's kind of also working with them on the budget thing too.
Right.
Yeah, it's a great idea. I would love that, but I don't know if it'll.
Yeah, it's probably maybe a perfect world type thing.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, thank you.
Manny, this is
Hey,
Maureen. I'm also a dietitian. Hi. And Megan, great job. One thing that I do or my approach, which is very similar to Megan's approach, because I'm from Michigan, and I also teach at a lot of the fire departments up here and also police departments, but I've really had to modify my approach with them as well, because I also work with professional athletes who actually eat much in line with, well, at least the ones I work with, which is baseball, with firefighters. But what I've done is I've basically simplified my entire approach to 3 principles, which is focusing on hydration, because I feel like that's got to be a priority, obviously with firefighters. And then number 2 is just encouraging them to eat more fruits and vegetables, period. I don't give them a number. I just try and really encourage that concept, because I feel like a lot of goodness comes along with that. And then the last thing is I just try and educate on eating less processed food. And I find that if I can just really kind of simplify it to those 3 things, and then branch off for those that are more interested or want more detail. But for the broad group, I feel like that really, people can do that. People can think, okay, I can drink more water, or firefighters can think that, or yeah, I can eat more fruits and vegetables, or I can, what is processed food and how can I maybe change that up and not eat so much of it? Those 3 simple things, I think, can make a really big difference in someone's overall health. And then, I'm sure too, but with fire departments, you've got such a broad spectrum of people. You've got people who are off the charts with being dialed in to just won't eat a vegetable if you put it in front of them. But really, all 3 of those concepts can fit both groups, because the people who are off the charts, they could afford to eat more fruits and vegetables too. So I don't know. I feel like that's been a really effective approach for me. But certainly I went in with a little bit different concept myself, thinking I needed to really teach them a lot more than that. So for overall health, I feel like that has been effective.
Right on. Thanks for sharing.
So Megan, I'm going to hop in here because it sounds like there might not be too many more questions. But the interesting thing about what Maureen said, and what we can all take home as a great message, is you don't have to be a dietitian to give the advice of drink more water, focus on your fruits and veggies, and try not to eat things that come out of a bag or a fluorescent colored box. And I think that that's a beautiful take-home message that we can give to all of our firefighters without even having the credentials. So I think that's important to remember, that we don't have to be a dietitian to give basic information like that. Of course, if someone's got a medical condition or something like that, absolutely not. That would be a referral, but just keep that in mind too. Does anyone else have any questions? All right, Megan, parting thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just small changes for you and for the department. Try and make it convenient. Try and make it fit into their life. Make it targeted to firefighters, not just general pop. They have very specific challenges with their shifts, their scheduling. So if you can find a way to make it fit, when it's easier, it's cheaper, it's convenient, it can make really big changes in your department.
100% agree. And last chance for questions, otherwise we'll sign off, and we appreciate you so much, Megan. Any more questions? Okay, great. I'm going to go ahead and edit this, and I will send it out via the Facebook group, probably in the next couple of days. I'm on duty tomorrow. Oh, wait, I see a chat. Hold on. Oh, it's Chris Morella. He says thank you. Everybody have a great night, and I believe that we're going to have Dina Kilpatrick present next time. So I will verify that with her, and thank you so much for joining in. Have a great night.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.